Hello, what is up, guys? Now, I'm a pretty big budget player at the moment, keep that in mind, but I'm going to go over I was testing out a lot of budget control decks, and I really want to just let you guys know what I found overall. I guess the best way to put it. One thing I was testing a lot is Assassin. Let me say why I was testing Assassin first. I was testing Assassin because this is where I mainly have the big dudes. Look at this. I have so many legendaries. You go to green, and let's just type. Once again, I have tons of green and blue legendaries, and you look at my other colors, and yeah, it falls off pretty hard at other colors. Well, except here, but pretty much. Oh yeah, by the way, it's so beautiful. But anyways, pretty much that's what I pulled, so that's what I go for. Now, what I want to talk about is a good way to measure how good a card is, and some cards I tested. So this is the main budget deck I was using at top 100-ish legendary throughout most of the season so far. It's pretty budgety, it's pretty jank. There's a lot of things you can probably do to improve it. Sorry, my mouse is messing up a little bit. But here's the thing, okay? So when you're playing a control deck, what's the main thing a control deck has to do? A control deck stalls a game. And this is like, alright, so the deck, it works fine for me against aggro and mid-range. Like aggro and mid-range, you gotta just survive. Maybe two more werebats would help out a lot. But typically the criminal burglar will make me survive long enough, and like lightning bolts and crushing blows and such, and finish off with my couriers or thieves guild recruits. It'll typically be enough to survive. Worst case, if I have to, I'll waste like a shackle ability or something in order to just survive for a bit longer or something. But or arrow to the knee. But here's the thing, okay? Let's go over Fear. This is the first guy. He was in the original version of the deck. Hold on, just a second. Okay, that should make it better. He was in the original version of the deck, okay? Let's quickly look at this guy. When I first saw this guy, I was like, alright, he's a win condition. He's all I need for this deck. I just stall, get to Fear, and then I could just win the game, right? Wrong. Really wrong. First off, I used this guy in 25 games, which means I went 20 wins and 5 losses in those games. He got me lethal in 2 games. One game I would have got lethal anyways because I was way ahead and the guy had 6 HP and there's nothing on his board, and then it's a free lethal. The other game it was pretty lucky. He had enemy had like 3 minions on board and he had his face anyways for the exact 6 lethal, so in that situation he was good. But in every other game, if I played this guy at all, usually it was a dead draw. If I played him though, the enemy would just remove him. So let's really think about this for a second. Let's think about, there's 3 archetypes in this meta typically. First off, there's aggro. How well does this guy do against aggro? Terrible. Let me explain. 11 magic and aggro typically won't really do anything. They have to do something really crazy to be good against aggro, because you're most likely not going to make it to 11 magicka against aggro, and if you do make it to 11 magicka, then you're going to win anyways. So at that point, an 11 magicka card is just a win more card, in most cases. So this guy's not very good against aggro. How good is he against mid-range / tempo? Very bad. Let me explain why. That's actually the main point of why I'm not running this card. That's the main spot where he screws you over really hard. Against mid-range / tempo, one, he's going to get removed very easily. So you're basically paying 11 magicka. Okay? 11 magicka. There's very few things you can play alongside 11 magicka. Very, very few. But especially in this deck, it's pretty much just Firebolt and Shackle. If you're on max magicka, that is. You're essentially spending 11 magicka to deal 6 damage. That's what you're doing if you're playing the tempo game against tempo, which is what you're going to do in a sense, because you don't want to just get out. You don't want the tempo deck to get too far ahead, or it's just going to win. So as a win condition against tempo and mid-range, which I kind of combine those two because they essentially play sort of the same, this guy is completely useless. Completely. You might as well use 2 lightning bolts. You could use almost 3 lightning bolts at the cost of this guy. Think about that for a second. 3 lightning bolts is going to do a lot more than this guy's going to do in every situation. The fact that it's also random is a very big deal as well, of course. So yeah, now let's look at control. In a control versus control mirror, this guy is still not amazing, but he's actually good. He's actually playable. The reason why, yeah, they will be able to remove him every single time, but at least you're trading 2 for 1 pretty much every time. Like, he's gonna be played, he's gonna deal 6 damage to something. If it's their face, that really sucks. You get screwed over, which makes him not good. But at the same time, if he hits another minion, kills it, and then they have to use removal to kill him, then you're kind of okay with that. He is a big threat. He is something they have to use removal on. So after all these things are considered, you have to think about the meta. If the meta was nothing but control, then maybe I'd be okay with running him. But because it isn't, this guy's literally not playable. He really is not playable right now, at least in this deck. Like I said, I'm able to refine maybe with more drain, maybe with more guards or something. Maybe like I could build more around him, but I just don't think this is the way to go to play around him. I really don't. I just don't think he's good in this meta, and those are the reasons why I don't think he's good. So let's compare to another big threat, because these are the main reasons why you play control. You play control for big threats. You don't play it for anything else. You don't play it, like, sure, controlling the board's fun, but you're mainly playing it to make your win condition with these big, giant dudes, okay? Let's look at Dragon Priest. How good is Dragon Priest against aggro? Once again, you're probably not going to make it to 10 Magicka, but if you do, this is one of the rare cases where a huge Magicka card is good against aggro, okay? I mean, maybe he's not, like, amazing, but he's good for a high Magic card against aggro. He's one of the better ones. The reason why is because, 5/5 in this game is typically a good threat. Like, look at the stats on most of these big cards, okay? And I can go on and on. 5/5 is typically a threat. You don't see too many cards with huge stats. You do see them, but you don't see them a lot. It's typically around 5/5, 6/6 is your big threats. So he is decently statted for his cost in this game. But not only that, being able to play this guy along, not only cycling, but also drawing, like, you get another option to play for free the same turn with him, is really strong against aggro. So essentially you can be in situations where you're facing aggro, and sure, there's a lot of situations where you're going to win anyways in these situations, but let's just pretend you're not going to. Let's pretend you played like a werebat, and you attacked into his face to over 4, and you didn't want to play him in the lane with another guy, because maybe you only have this one drain, and you need this guy to survive to win. And after playing this whereby this guy has this, 2/3 orc in the other lane that he's using to try to kill you or something, I don't know. And he hits you in face again, let's say you have like 10 HP, so you're like sort of in the stabilizing spot, but you're not 100% in the clear, and then you draw this guy on 10 Magicka. You play this guy, and then you play a guard alongside him. It's a lot better than just playing the guard, right? So like you're developing a 5/5, and you're playing the guard. He's just a really solid card against aggro. He's not the best, but he's one of the better high drops against aggro. Against tempo mid-range, how good is this guy? Out of the charts amazing, okay? He is freaking game-changing against tempo and mid-range, which is some of the bigger stuff you'll see in the meta right now. This guy is outstanding against it, from what I can tell. From what I've seen so far, what I've played with, and all that. Just the fact that you can develop a 5/5 for a lot of Magicka at the same time as developing possibly another really big Magicka guy, or even playing this guy alongside a giant snake or something, or a Winter's Grasp, or a Grinroll Burglar. There's so many things you can do with this guy that don't even have to be super big guys, but just playing him alongside like even a Crushing Blow removal or something. It's a really strong turn, a really strong play, and it's just really nice. This guy's just a really solid card against it. How good is he against control? Control is where he falls off a bit. Against control, like, obviously you don't really value drawing cards very much. You're going to be high on cards pretty much the entire game, as well as you don't really want to flood the board too much because they have tons of ways to board clear in most cases, which, he's not really going to do too much in those situations. But he is a card that can just win you the game instantly if they don't have a board clear and you use him with Astromancer or something. So let's, there's times when he can be huge, but rarely will he be. Typically controls his worst matchup. But of course, like I said, he's so good in against mid-range tempo, and he's so good against aggro for a late-game threat that I would pretty much insta-put this guy in all my blue decks from now on after testing him out. He's just such an amazing card. Really is. Supreme Astromancer. How good is she against, aggro? Against aggro, she's still pretty slow, but overall I'd say she's at least playable. Like, she's not bad. But like I said, I mean, 9 Magicka, all these are pretty slow, and you have to take a turn to play her and all this. And she does like 4 damage when played, but that's not enough to really deter aggro from still going face, stuff like that. If you're playing her, you're most likely going to win anyway, so she's kind of against aggro. How good is she against mid-range tempo? Against mid-range tempo, depending on how well you can stall, I would say she's okay to good. Yeah, she's not like super crazy good, but she is pretty good. Built around with like fire bands and stuff, this card's insane. But because you can't do that in green-blue, we're mainly focusing on green-blue, and my experience is in green-blue. With Nest of Vipers, this card's absolutely insane, by the way. But let's just not think about that right now. So mainly this card is in here not for the aggro matchup. It's the mid-range tempo matchup. She's kind of okay. Like if you stabilize and you play her, it's basically like, I slammed this down. What are you gonna do now? You don't have AOE to deal with this in mid-range. I'm gonna win. So she can be game winning against mid-range aggros. I'd say okay to good is the best way to rate her. But she's not like outstanding. She's not huge. But in some situations, she's game winning. Against control, they have to use Ice Storm. Mage control is the predominant thing in the ladder at the moment, so I would say it's probably what you're going to run into. If they don't use that, though, and they don't have it, she'll win you the game. She's straight up, what is it? 13 plus 4, so she's 17. She's 17-9 in stats, right? Yeah, she's 17-9 in stats. And then the only issue is only 4 of those, only 4 attack goes straight, does something the turn played. Everything else is value-wise. She has to take a turn to attack and all this. It being split into different parts can be good, can be bad in certain situations. Typically good, except for against Ice Storm. But it's better against like Dawn's Wrath, Manticoras, stuff like that. So, and Mirax. So in a sense, it's like, it's fine. But you know, it's only 3 Ice Storms that they're typically running, and the rest they have to use single removal. So in this meta right now, she's pretty freaking strong. But I can see a meta where she's not going to be very strong against control, especially like yellow-purple decks, or blue-purple decks, or, I'm sorry, not blue-purple decks, like mainly just yellow-purple, like decks with yellow, because they can eventually run Immolating Blast, Dawn's Wrath, and there's another removal that I'm forgetting for some reason right now, but I know there's another removal that I'm forgetting. Anyways, so right now she's actually pretty strong, so she's definitely just a really good win condition for that reason. Even though she's pretty bad against aggro, but you still want these big late game threats, and you can run these things that are good against aggro to stall to her, and she's a good win condition late game against aggro, because aggro doesn't have a way to deal with her. Mid-range tempo doesn't as well. Control does, but if they don't deal with her, you'll just win, and control has to draw the cards, and in this meta right now, they don't run enough cards to deal with her, if that makes sense. So what's my other late game threat really as blue? Like, yeah, I don't really have any more. My other late game threat technically is Archmage, although I'm tempted to take him out. I mean, he is kind of a threat, but not really. Like, he's mainly the guy that you kind of drop him, and then he just gets rid of a lane. And he actually does consistently quite a bit. But the issue is that he just doesn't do enough. Like, against aggro, he still feels a little slow, but if you can get him out against aggro, he can do some work. He can, like, yeah, he just does a lot. Against mid-range tempo, he is amazing in certain situations, but in situations he's way too slow, which is a huge issue. And against control, he's just slow. Yeah, I would say even against control, he's just slow. Like, 6 damage at that point against another control deck, he's not really going to do anything. Like, control's running a lot of big minions, like Manticoras and stuff, and they're just going to drop the Manticore in the other lane and then kill him, or they're going to steal him with Mirac, like, or they're going to play a freaking 12-12, they're purple, and you're going to be like, why am I running this guy? Like, so I don't want to say he's bad, like, I don't want to say any card's ever bad. I just think in this deck that I'm running, I don't think he's very good, and I might end up taking him out for, especially like another Astromancer, or I might take him out for another Nest of Vipers, possibly. But definitely, I don't want this guy on my deck anymore. After playing with him a lot, like I said, he's too slow for aggro, too slow for tempo mid-range, and he's extremely bad against control, so he's really just not worth running, in this deck at least. I'm sure there's a deck out there where he's really good, but in this deck he's not worth running. Neither of these are. I'm just running him right now, and I don't really know why. There's probably something better I can put even in a budget option. So let's go to green. Let's go to the late game threats in green, because this is what we're playing control. We're not going to go over every single little card. We're just going to go over the late game threats. Quinral Burglar. This guy is absolutely the MVP of this budget deck. Quinral Burglar, like if you play him, and one against aggro, how good is he? Against aggro, this guy's insane. This guy will win you the game alone against aggro, okay? This guy's an amazing card against aggro. He's the best card in this deck against aggro. How good is he against mid-range / tempo? Against mid-range / tempo, let's say he's still good. They have to like lose some of their tempo to deal with him. Typically, if they don't deal with him, you can get way ahead and you can win off of him alone. And then the shackle with alongside of him, you can shackle their entire board and they can't deal with him. He just keeps wailing on their face and healing you for like what seems like infinite. Against control, he typically gets removed, but if he doesn't get removed, he's a win condition, so he's still okay. So yeah, just a really good card. This guy right here is just a really good card. He honestly is. And against every matchup, he's a good card. Reaper, it's hard to say he's a huge threat. He's more like just a reactive card. I'll go ahead and say he's a huge threat. Because I'm running like finish offs, and I think I was running a leaf lurker, but I took him out of the deck. Didn't really like the leaf lurker, to be honest. I might put him back in there maybe, but maybe for the archmage, I don't know. I mean, this guy, he just doesn't feel all that amazing in this meta. Like, alright, against aggro, he's way too slow typically. Like, he just doesn't really do enough. Like, aggro doesn't run a lot of 1 HP minions. At least the current aggro being ran, they typically, if they're going to play 1 HP minion, it's going to be with the Ashramancer or with Merrick or something. They don't really run a lot of 1 HP minions, so they aren't buffing up with weapons. And at that point, if you use a -1/-1 against them, it's not going to do anything. Against mid-range tempo, he's really strong because they're going to fill up the board. You play this guy, and they're typically not going to kill you too fast, like Archer. And you play this guy, and then you just get huge value off of him. But sadly, they can kill him pretty easily as well, which is a little bit of an issue, but not a huge one. You already get the value of playing him and getting that, getting that -4 essentially through their -1 to their entire board, -1, which is really nice. Against control, this guy's really weak. This guy's really weak against control. Without the finish off Leaf Lurker synergy, he's unplayable against control, but because that exists, he's actually moving up from not playable to like okay, but he's like in the middle of that against control. So overall, I'd say he's playable, but he's definitely a budget option that I would not run, really. I don't think I want to run him. Tazgad, I mean, Tazgad's freaking Tazgad. This guy, he is the threat in green. He is the biggest threat in green. Every time you play against green, you're thinking, am I at 6 HP? I'm probably going to die to Tazgad. Like, you're freaking terrified of this guy. Let's go ahead and think about it. Against aggro, he is actually one of the few late game threats that's fast enough, because he does something the second he's played. He can kill a huge priority threat or something. Against mid-range tempo, he's really strong as well, because once again, he can kill them, and then he doesn't die instantly if they try to do some kind of synergy to kill him. You get a 4/4 anyway, so you're not wasting all your magicka, and he does something the turn he's played anyway, so you're still not wasting your magicka. Against control, he's just extremely powerful, so yeah, run this guy. I mean, he's good against all matchups. Nest of Vipers. Against aggro, this is way too slow, obviously, extremely slow. Against mid-range tempo, it's good enough. Like, it's not like mind-blowingly amazing, but at the same time, it's good enough to where, like I said, mid-range tempo is not going to kill you super fast. It's not like aggro where they can get these turn 5 to 6 lethals if you don't have enough drains and such. So there will be situations where they have like a full board, and they're kind of just like sitting there not wanting to break any runes to give you a chance to come back, and then you have this in your hand, and you just play it, you get rid of their entire board, you reset, and they're almost out of hands, and of course they're going to play Yarrow after that, but still, they're almost completely out of cards, and you have a full hand, and now you're stabilizing, you're playing your drains, and you're going to win the game now. And Nest of Vipers has done that for me so many times. This card has won me so many games that I don't care how many people say it's a bad card. I love this card. Would I run 2 or 3 of them though? Questionable. I don't think I'd ever run 3 unless I'm running an extremely late game stall deck and I'm really trying to target control or something. But I'd say at most I'd run 2, and I'm probably just only going to stick to 1 forever, even if I get more copies, right? Because it is a little slow, but it's definitely extremely powerful. Against control, obviously, this card is absolutely insane against control mirrors. Like it's insane. It'll always trade 2 for 1. Sometimes it trades 4 for 1. You just kill anything. Like this card against ramp is freaking crazy. Like you kill the 12/12, and then you have 3/1/1s left over to kill whatever else they play. It's crazy. It's just crazy. It's like the best card in the game in the control mirrors almost, except for like Mundus Stone. I don't have these cards. I probably wouldn't run either of them in this deck though. But I do have a deck in mind where I'm going to run her. And then there's more late game threats. One, Mundus Stone. The issue with Mundus Stone is it's bad against aggro, it's bad against tempo, but it's absolutely insane against control. And so if this ever becomes a control meta, I'll run this. Maybe if there's a deck where I can stabilize enough consistently against mid-range to run this, I would run it anyways, because it's not too much aggro on the ladder right now. And then Odahviing. Odahviing, obviously, he's one of the best neutral threats in the game for control. The thing about Odahviing is how good is he against aggro? Because of Dragon Priest, he's playable against aggro, but obviously he's typically too slow anyways. Against mid-range tempo, this guy's absolutely insane. Like if you can get this guy off, a lot of times he'll just win you the game against them. Against control, I'd say he's still good because a lot of control decks run a lot of things to stabilize against mid-range tempo. Like you'll see even my deck, like this is a control deck and I'm running tons of things with 4 or less HP. So there's a lot of things this guy could kill. I'm not like, I would love to run a lot more big guys, but you can't really, because if you do, you're just gonna fall too far behind. Like I said, I'm thinking about getting rid of Archmage. Definitely thinking about it actually. I would actually not run Archmage. You don't need that guy in this deck at all, so don't worry. This is not super expensive deck at all. But yeah, he's just because of the mid-range tempo matchup, this guy's so good for a control game. Just stalling up to him and playing him basically wins you the game. I would say he's definitely playable. Definitely a overall strong card, but he's not like must run. He's just really strong, and I would suggest crafting him, but at the same time, I would hesitate to say like you must craft him to make a deck work in control, right? There's something else I wanted to say, but so basically that's my Shackle deck, and that's a rundown of the big game threats, which is the main part of why you play control, is the big game threats. Like obviously you can see I want 2 more Werebats. Werebat's just absolutely crazy good. Lightning bolts are crazy good. Schemers are mainly for the control matchup and just cycling through your deck. Courier such. Yeah. Might end up changing it. This is a deck I've been running right now. It's 100% budget, and this is nowhere near the complete version. But it's essentially a deck that relies on Okay, I know I want to get rid of Keeper Whispers. She actually doesn't make any sense. I noticed that not enough people are running Silence in this meta, to be completely honest. But it's essentially going to be a tempo deck that's going to build off of wards, lethals, and drains. And the way that's going to work is, first off, drains have extremely high attack, but they have low HP. So the one thing, how well would this deck do against aggro? And I know this is a little off topic because I was talking about something else before, but now I'm going to talk about this deck for a second and the idea behind it, and I hope you guys can make this work, and I'm going to try when I get the cards. I think this idea is absolutely going to be bonkers, and I think this is going to be the deck that's going to make Assassin top of the meta, at least if the meta stays the way it is, if someone can refine it to where it works. So basically the idea is that I don't even have 3 savages, but anyways, the idea is that lethal just destroys pretty much anyone. Like if you're playing against control deck, lethal's gonna kill their big threats. You don't need anything else. Your lethals are gonna destroy their big threats. You don't actually have to run big threats to deal with controls big threats, if that makes sense. And it sucks for them to use a Manticora like against small threats. So in a sense, like big threats aren't even needed. The other thing is that you won't lose to Ice Storm and stuff like that, because if you can run enough wards, I only have 2 of these so far though, but if you can run enough wards, then you can essentially ward these guys off to where Ice Storm won't kill them. Really strong. You're going to be able to stay ahead of tempo. You're going to be able to, aggro is going to get destroyed by you because you're running all these drains. Like, there's no way aggro is going to beat you if, like, alright, well, yeah, I know I'm not making a good case because I don't have enough drains in this deck yet, but it's going to have a lot of drains, and it has a lot of guards. Like, House Kinsman, I'm going to have 3 of those. Werebat's, I'm going to have 3 of those. Surprised I don't have more drains. Oh yeah, the burglars, I'm going to have 3 of those. And then I might run snake tooth necklaces, but I'm not 100% sure on that. But then the idea is that, like, against mid-range and aggro, you can use your wards to value trade easily and to put on your guards, and it's extremely hard for them to deal with. Almost near impossible for aggro, but mid-range does have ways. Control, like I said, you can just use your wards to make sure that cards can't die, which is extremely powerful against their AoEs and such. And as well as you have lethals to deal with their small threats, and they have to deal with your threats, which is like savages, which you're going to get big really fast, and avengers, which is really hard for them to deal with, and just high attack drains constantly coming at them, which may not seem too scary, but it actually is. Tazgad will definitely be in the finished version of this. Nest of Vipers, I really like it in this deck because you can ward it up to where it just gets even more value, and it basically forces them to use an Ice Storm if they have it in hand or something. I just think if this deck can be refined, it'll be one of the strongest decks in the meta. Of course, I haven't refined it, not even close. Plus, I'm using a really budget version of it. I probably wouldn't run Slaughterfish if you have better cards. Definitely not. Don't run this card. Silence is not big in the meta at all. I tested it, okay? Silence is not played at all at like 100 Legend. It's not. It's not even existent. This card's actually really strong. I might run 3 of them in this deck. It's just really strong. Assassin has no way to deal with supports, and they're running rampant on ladder. So yeah. Alright guys, well that was it. It's a really long video just about an insight to how I felt about my testing, and I hope you guys learned something from it. Yeah, I hope you guys have a great night, great day wherever you're from. It's my good friend Shema would say, and I love you all.